Wow. I was just like, just tearing up backstage because it just like, it all feels like a dream come true, you know? Should I let you watch this painting happen? I don't know if we have time. Maybe nah, you can see it in the lobby. Okay. I'm just painting some stuff. You can catch it on Instagram. I know our time is short, so we got to get to lunch, and we're going to go have some fun, get you guys out of these seats. But I just have a message that I want to share with you today, and it's one that I didn't think that I was going to share. But as I prayed over this event, as I prayed over you, and who would be here, this was the message that I felt like I should share. And it's actually not that complex. Number one, I believe that we are children of God. I believe that divinity runs within us, and because we are his daughters, there is nothing that we can't do. We are capable of everything, and it also means that we are loved. I also believe that we are both body and spirit connected together in this vessel. And I believe that when we strengthen one part of us, it enhances the other. If you strengthen your body, it enhances your spirit. You strengthen your spirit, it enhances your body. And this idea that we are body and spirit has been a major theme of this whole conference, and of the whole idea of why I'm doing this is bringing these realms of spiritual strength and physical strength together. And I think we've seen some incredible examples of that today. I also believe that we were spiritually created and then also physically created. Just like my paintings were created first in a sketchbook, in a journal entry. They were a thought, they were an idea. And then I put in the work to make them happen and made them a physical thing. I believe that we too have a spiritual blueprint for our lives, a plan. And as I was thinking about that, I was thinking about the process of building something. And in Jeremiah 1:5, it says, "Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee." And that tells me something really beautiful. And that's like I'm an eternal soul, and that God had a plan for me from the beginning. And I love how C.S. Lewis says, God looks at you as if you were a little Christ, and then Christ stands beside you to turn you into one. Essentially, God is the architect of our lives, and if we let him, his son will work in our lives to turn us into something truly beautiful. And it involves both our body and our spirit and our mind. And I honestly discovered this verse in Corinthians as I was preparing this message. For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field. You are God's building. Have you ever thought about that? Building. I mean, I think we call our bodies sometimes like a tabernacle of clay, you know? But I love this idea that I was a structure that God was like working on. And I have a firm belief that our construction process, our creation process, did not end when we were born. That we are all works in progress that he is continually working on if we let him. Now, as I thought about this word building, I couldn't help think about some other buildings. So I found a Celtic concept for a place where heaven and earth collide is called a thin place. And I thought this was such a cool wording. I love this so much. And that a thin place is anywhere where the boundary between heaven and earth becomes thin. And there's like this sense of the divine. And it made me think about throughout my life, I've had the experience to visit many thin places. When I was 12 years old, we lived on the island of Penang for a summer. It's just off the coast of Malaysia. And I was able to climb the 1,000 steps to the Kek Lok Si Temple, which is up here on the left. And then I've also been to the cathedrals in Jerusalem. And then I also just 2 years ago was invited to a Hindu wedding inside a 6th century Hindu temple. And all of these places were thin places for me, or places where I felt close to something greater than myself. Another place I think most of you can relate with is a place where the air is thin on the tops of mountains. This is my husband and I hiking in the Canary Islands on the island of Tenerife.
There's the path that never ends. And then all of a sudden, you look up and it's like, oh my goodness. There is a God. Look what he made. Look what he did. And it was all for us.
I was literally just filled with awe, you know? My sister's been hiking mountains all summer, and I think she does it because she finds them to be thin places for herself. Now, getting a little biblical here, back in the Old Testament, Moses also climbed mountains to find himself in a thin place. And when he was on the top of Mount Sinai, God instructed him to create his own thin place, and they called it the tabernacle. And why did God ask Moses to build this tabernacle? Because he wanted to be closer to his people. And he says, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. I mean, how beautiful is that God loved them so much that he's like, make me a house, I'm gonna come hang out with you guys. Now, like Paul in the New Testament, he takes this idea of a temple and he adds a layer to it. He says, do you not know that you have lost your microphone? Texting. Made it. They're coming. Texting. Okay. Wait, this one's good. Cool. So he's like, do you not know that you are the temple of God and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? For the temple of God is holy, which temple you are. See, if you think about this, the building, God's building of the tabernacle was a place where he could come visit his people. It was bringing heaven to earth, combining heaven and earth. And Paul's saying, you are one of those things because heaven and earth reside in you. You are a temple. Isn't that beautiful? Now, as I've looked in the Old Testament, I've learned a few things about the physical buildings that kind of apply to our physical building process, and I want to talk with you about them a little bit today. The first thing is that it takes time. The tabernacle that Moses built in the wilderness took 6 months, and then Solomon, later in the Old Testament, built the first stationary temple, and then that temple was actually destroyed, and then it was rebuilt. And it took 22 years the next time. And then if we wanted to, get local here in Utah, we have a Salt Lake temple that took 40 years to build. And I point all this out to tell you that I'm pretty sure not any temple was built in a 6-week challenge, And so as you're building your temple, as you're working on your tabernacle, think about that it takes time and be patient with yourself. The other idea is that sometimes temples are destroyed and they have to be rebuilt, just like the Temple of Solomon. And I don't know about you, but as a mom, 4 kids, every time I have a kid, I have to choose to rise up and build again, because every time you have a kid, it's surrendering that body, and you kind of have to start over. Anybody that's had a kid knows it feels like that temple just got burned to the ground. and there's all kinds of ways, that we get destroyed and reconstructed. Like Jesse Graff, it had all of those injuries. But it's so beautiful to know that it's possible, that we can rebuild and that we can rebuild stronger than we were before. Now, another thing that I learned in temple building is that you have to trust the architect and trust that he has a plan for you. Did you guys know there's 1,200 references in the Bible to temple building? Because God cared so much about all these details. He'd tell them, use these raw materials and make it this size. And I think about how when we're building our temples or building our tabernacles, who do we look to for advice on how to build it? Instagram? Magazines? Or moms? I mean, it's so crazy because I think about growing up in the 90s and it was low fat was the thing. I remember I used to eat licorice thinking it was good for me because it was fat free. And Tootsie Rolls, those were basically a health food. And now, and then the narrative changes because we are not perfect as humans. And the narrative's oh, JK, sugar's actually super bad. And so it's always like how the world is going to tell you how to build your temple or tabernacle will always change because mankind is flawed. But have you ever thought that God could give you personal instruction on how to build your temple, on how to build your body? That you might need different protein needs than your neighbor? That you might have a different, a physical exercise routine that might be better for you than somebody else? And because we are all so unique, right? So let the architect give you instructions on how to build your temple. Now, I'm also going to recommend that we take a little time to spend time with the architect. This is a children's book that I loved growing up. I actually was an illustration student in college, so I loved children's books. Raise your hand if you have read Yours Special by Max Lucado. So good. So I'm preaching the choir, but we all love Little Puccinello, right? And in this town of Wemix, if you don't know this story, the little village people went around giving stars if you were pretty or you're talented. And if you had chipped paint and if you tripped, they would give you dots. And little Puccinello was just covered in dots. And one day he met this girl who had no stickers at all. And he's like, tell me, what are you doing that you don't have any stickers? And she says, well, I just spend a little time each day with Eli at the top of the mountain. And Eli was the carver, the creator. And so Puccinello decides that he's going to hike up this mountain and go spend some time with Eli. And Eli tells him, remember you are special because I made you, and I don't make mistakes. And I found that as I have tried to spend a little time with the Creator, He has taught me who I am, and He's taught me how to build my temple. When I was growing up, I was shy. I would have never in a million years ever wanted to be doing what I'm doing right now. And if you look at my report card from 7th grade, I only got 1 B ever. And what class was it in? I didn't know I was going to be an artist. How did I discover that? I spent a little time with the Creator every day. Through a very simple process, I would just write in my journal, read my scriptures, and pray. And just that little bit of time with Him every day was enough for Him to teach me who I was. And He taught me when I was 17 that I could be an artist. And He taught me when I was 34 that I could be a ninja. And He taught me when I was 40 that maybe I could be a founder of an event. You see, he just keeps adding another layer. When I paint, I paint one layer at a time, then I add another layer, and He can do the same thing for you. Now, sometimes we get reconstructed, and sometimes the remodeling hurts. C.S. Lewis says, imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house. At first, you can understand what He's doing. He's getting the drains right and stopping the leaks in the roof and so on. You knew those jobs needed doing, so you're not surprised. But presently, He starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts abominably. It does not seem to make any sense. What on earth is He up to? The explanation is that He is building quite a different house from the one you thought of. Throwing out a new wing here, putting on an extra floor there, running up towers, making courtyards. You thought you were being made into a decent little cottage. But He is building a palace. What? A palace He intends to come in and live in Himself. Just like that parallel I drew at the beginning with the temple. Now, I've had some reconstructing processes in my life. As I shared with you guys earlier today, it was the day that my son fell in a pool. And that was the beginning.
My breaking point came in the fall of 2011. I was a young mom to 2 little boys, and one day I pulled my 3-year-old Victory Morgan lifeless from the swimming pool. And it just takes your breath, and you think, this can't be real. I'm gonna wake up. But then you end up in the hospital for 7 weeks, and I just remember so bad wanting to go back to normal, and I didn't get what I wanted. My son passed away, and my world shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. As I found a way to hand all those shattered pieces of myself to God, He actually didn't intend for me to go back to normal at all, because He had a better version of me waiting on the other side, a version of me that could have only happened through the struggle. And that's such a beautiful lesson for life as well, because life is hard and my art is hard. And when I paint, it takes me 4 or 5 layers to get it right. And here I am applying to American Ninja Warrior for the 4th time, and I've yet to hit a buzzer. I've been broken. I broke my nose. I tore my shoulder. But instead of quitting, I keep coming back stronger and hoping that I eventually have the strength that it takes to finish the course. I mean, all I really want is to share my story, to help some person out there that might be in the shattered phase of their life. And so now I'm combining these worlds of ninja and my art, and I'm painting American Ninja Warrior athletes because I love that you can see on their bodies the struggle, because it's etched there in their muscles, the fibers that have been torn over and over again, and now they're renewed and they're stronger. You can be shattered, you can be broken, you can experience challenges, and you can come back better on the other side. All of those times that we fall, they matter because we get stronger through the struggle. And I can't wait to take this stronger version of myself onto the season 15 course.
That was a couple seasons ago. But I know what it feels like to be reconstructed, guys. I know that it hurts. But just like our muscles have to be torn to come back together stronger, like God does not put us through one moment of suffering and pain that he cannot then turn around and use to our benefit. And my life has been so beautiful. All of it. Look at you. Look at this room. All of this has come post Reconstruction, right? Now, just one last note. When the temple was done, it was dedicated for service to the Lord. Exodus 40, so Moses finished the work, and then a cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Now, I want to apply this to building our bodies, building our temples, because the world seems to make it seem to be about like, get ready for swimsuit season. I mean, that's such a shallow reason to try to be healthy and to get strong, right? God doesn't care about the color of the carpet, okay? He cares about your foundation. He wants to make sure your foundation is strong, right? And if you make God the focus of your life, the sure foundation that you build on, then he can do incredible things with you. And I think about how, like, when I first started lifting weights, I was just at a rec center in our hometown in Pleasant Grove. And I saw some people that were like, you know, really into themselves, like filming all their workouts, checking to make sure abs were still there. And then, like, on the other hand, I saw people, like women who were killing themselves, and it just seemed like never enough. Like they're berating themselves, like, oh, I don't have a thigh gap, and oh, my love handles, and whatever. And it was like never enough. And I saw these like polar opposites of how people were viewing themselves when it came to strength, and I was just thinking, that's not it. Like, neither of those views are healthy. And then I'm just questioning, asking this to God, like, what's the healthy viewpoint? And I'm there, standing in front of the mirror, just lifting, and all of a sudden this thought comes into my mind. And this is, again, before I could even really do a pull-up. And it was, you can be a warrior for him. And I was like, yes. And I'm telling you, creating this tabernacle for a sacred purpose, way more motivating than how you're going to look at the beach. And so as I close today, I just want you to think about this connection that you have here inside you. You are body and spirit. You are mortal and divine. And that let these two pieces be strengthened and work together. And let God be the architect for your life. Trust him with the blueprints. And then dedicate your life to his service. And watch miracles happen. Let's go change the world.